Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Rouhani and these are the headlines. Pakistan says India is delusional to think it can remove the issue of occupied Jammu and Kashmir from the agenda of the UN Security Council. Pakistan's UN envoy Munir Akram says the agenda can only be changed with the consensus of the Council. Earlier, New Delhi asked the UN body to remove the issue ahead of the 75th session of the General Assembly this month. The Taliban say a senior delegation has returned to Qatar, paving the way for the start of direct talks with the Afghan government. In an interview, Taliban spokesman Suhail Shaheen said efforts are being made to resolve issues and a date for the talks will be announced soon. This comes after the Afghan government said it had released all but few prisoners the Taliban were demanding ahead of the negotiations. In the US, Portland police have arrested dozens of people as the Oregon city nears 100 days of demonstrations against racism. The city has seen more than 3 months of daily demonstrations calling for policing and social justice reforms. Protests against racism and police brutality were sparked by the killing of George Floyd at the hands of cops in May. Sudan has declared a national state of emergency for 3 months because of the floods that have killed nearly 100 people this year. In a statement, the country's Security and Defense Council has designated Sudan a natural disaster zone. Authorities say the floods affected more than 500,000 people and caused the collapse of more than 100,000 homes. Brazil has recorded 907 deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, increasing the tally to over 125,000. India continues to report the world's highest daily numbers as 1,089 more people died and another 86,000 tested positive overnight. In Pakistan, 5 people have lost their lives to the virus in the last 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,340. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 874,000 lives, while infecting over 26.6 million. And in sports, Lewis Hamilton has set the fastest lap in Formula One history to seal a dominant pole position for the Italian Grand Prix. The Mercedes driver smashed the Monza track record with a sensational lap of almost 1 minute and 18 seconds. Hamilton's teammate Valtteri Bottas finished second in qualifying, with McLaren's Carlos Sainz took the third spot. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan says India is delusional to think it can remove the issue of occupied Jammu and Kashmir from the agenda of the UN Security Council. Pakistan's UN envoy Munir Akram says the agenda set under the established rules can only be changed with the consensus of the Council. Akram said Islamabad is committed to resolving the issue in accordance with the wishes of the Kashmiri people. He said the presence of UN military observers in Kashmir proves the dispute is under the active consideration of the Security Council. He said the observers report the almost daily ceasefire violations by New Delhi to the UN and to the Security Council. Earlier this week, New Delhi asked the UN body to remove the issue ahead of the 75th session of the General Assembly this month. The Taliban say a senior delegation has returned to Qatar, paving the way for the start of peace talks with the Afghan government. In an interview, Taliban spokesman Sohail Shaheen said efforts are being made to resolve issues and a date for the talks will be announced soon. Earlier, Afghanistan's National Reconciliation Council chief Abdullah conditioned the negotiations with a ceasefire. He said the inter-Afghan talks will be carried out in several phases, with Qatar set to host the crucial dialogue. This comes after the Afghan government said it had released all but a few prisoners the Taliban were demanding ahead of the talks. In Bangladesh, at least 17 people have died in a blast at a mosque in central Narayanganj district. Health officials say 25 of some 30 injured worshippers are in critical condition. Fire officials suspect a gas leak to be the cause of the explosion. Officials say the blast went off when worshippers were about to leave the mosque after the night prayers. The authorities say firemen managed to bring the flames under control in about half an hour. The Bangladesh Fire Service and the Civil Defense have formed a committee to investigate the incident. The International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is continuing to increase its stockpile of enriched uranium in violation of the 2015 nuclear deal. In a confidential report, the IAEA said that Tehran's stockpile now stands at over 10 times the agreed limit. The agency said Tehran's low-enriched uranium stockpile grew by 533 kgs to over 2,100 in just over 3 months. The 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action allows Tehran to only keep a stockpile of just over 200 kgs. The report's release comes after the IAEA officials inspected one of Iran's 2 former nuclear sites. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has bemoaned Tehran's friends for not standing up to the United States. In an interview, Rouhani said friends of Iran should have condemned sanctions on Tehran during the coronavirus pandemic. He said this: if the US had a bit of humanity, it would have lifted sanctions on Iran for the duration of the health crisis. Rouhani said no one came to Iran's help in its fight against the pandemic. The United States has threatened to impose sanctions on whoever conducts business with Iran. Iran is the worst hit by pandemic in the Middle East, with more than 22,000 deaths. The Saudi-led coalition forces say they have destroyed an explosive-laden Houthi drone in the Yemeni airspace. Coalition spokesperson Colonel Turki al-Maliki said the drone was meant to hit civilian settlements in the kingdom. Al-Maliki said the unmanned aerial vehicle was destroyed before it could launch any explosives. The Houthis have not yet commented on the development. Saudi-led military coalition and the rebels are at war since 2015 after Houthis overran much of the country, including the capital city of Sana'a. The European Union has called for a multilateral conference to discuss tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean. Addressing the media, Council Chief Charles Michel said 27 leaders of EU member states will hold a meeting over the issue later this month. Michel said the conference will discuss the bloc's policies towards Turkey. He said the meeting will also review exclusive economic zone borders in the sea concerning energy, security and migration. He said Turkey and Greece have also been informed about the conference, which may help open a dialogue channel. Earlier, Turkey's Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said Ankara supports talks but will not compromise on its rights in the Eastern Mediterranean.
We are presenting reality and mathematics. We are asking to discuss and negotiate in this framework. And finally, as you know, after NATO Secretary General's conversation with our president, there are attempts to start military-level talks. We support these talks.
Turkey says its annual 5-day joint military exercises with northern Cyprus are set to kick off on Sunday. The Defense Ministry says the annual exercise aims at improving mutual training and cooperation between the two forces. It says the exercise will include air, naval and land forces from Turkey. This comes amid growing tension in the Eastern Mediterranean region between Turkey and Greece over rights to explore hydrocarbons in the region, with both the sides urging the international community to mediate between them. Brazil has recorded 907 deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, increasing the tally to over 125,000. India continues to report the world's highest daily numbers as 1,089 more people died and another 86,000 tested positive for the virus overnight. Now, globally, the virus has claimed more than 873,000 lives while infecting over 26.6 million. More in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic is continuing its reign of terror, pushing the world's health and economic resources to its limits. In Mexico, several state governments said they are running out of death certificates as the country approaches 67,000 fatalities. Brazil's TECPA Institute said it will conduct phase 3 trials of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine on 10,000 volunteers in early 2021. In the US, President Donald Trump has urged the Americans to observe COVID-19 precautions over the Labor Day weekend.
And we need everybody to be careful, to apply common sense and do all of the things that we've told you to do as quickly as much as you can. Social distancing, wearing a mask whenever the distancing is not possible, and staying with a group that you know. Let's just try and get through this one weekend, and I think we have a chance of doing that. Just social distance, wash your hands, all of the hygiene things that we speak about.
In Europe, France reported its highest daily post-lockdown in over 2 months, while the UK reported nearly 2,000 new cases, the highest since May 30th. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has once again urged against vaccine nationalism, saying such practices will only prolong the pandemic.
In our interconnected world, if people in low and middle-income countries miss out on vaccines, the virus will continue to kill and the economic recovery globally will be delayed. So, using vaccines as a global public good is in the national interest of each and every country. Vaccine nationalism will prolong the pandemic, not shorten it.
Mainland China has reported 0 cases in domestic transmission for over a fortnight now, while recording 10 newly imported cases. Elsewhere, South Korea has posted 200 infections for the 3rd day, with 168 new infections overnight.
Now, Pakistan's COVID-19 mortality rate continues to drop as the country reported 5 deaths overnight. Pakistan's health ministry said the death toll in the country stands at 6,340. The health ministry reported 513 new infections, raising the number of active cases to 9,132. It said with a 95% recovery rate, over 282,000 patients have recovered from the virus. The National Command and Operations Center says only 84 vents have been occupied across Pakistan out of 1,920 allocated for COVID-19 patients. It says 735 hospitals are providing facilities to over 1,000 patients admitted across the country, while 535 patients remain in critical condition. So time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Palestine has condemned Serbia's pledge to move its embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Palestine's ambassador to Serbia, Mohammed Nabhan, said the move violates the international law and the UN resolutions. Nabhan said the move will harm the traditional friendly relations between Palestine and Serbia. He said the move will also harm the rights of the Palestinians. Nabhan said numerous UN resolutions recognize Jerusalem as an occupied city. The Palestinian condemnation comes after the US said Serbia has committed to move its embassy and commercial office in Jerusalem later this month.
Serbia is committed to opening a commercial office in Jerusalem this month and to move its embassy to Jerusalem in July. That's fantastic. That's a big thing. That's a very big statement, and we appreciate that very much.
Washington alleges China has taken the most active role among the countries looking to interfere in the U.S. presidential election in November. At a press briefing, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said anyone attempting to meddle will face extraordinary consequences. O'Brien said Washington has warned Beijing, Moscow, Tehran and some other countries against any such move. O'Brien said despite the measures, the foreign powers will still try to spread the propaganda during the election season. He said the U.S. intelligence will monitor such activities and will do everything to protect the sanctity of American democracy.
There's always going to be propaganda. There's always going to be efforts to influence us. And again, we know that the Chinese have taken the most active role, but the Russians and the Iranians and other countries are involved as well. So we're going to keep monitoring it, and we're going to do everything we can to protect the sanctity of our election. That's the foundation of our democracy. That's what makes us America. And we're just not going to tolerate these other countries trying to get involved in our elections.
In the U.S., Portland police have arrested dozens of people as the Oregon city nears 100 days of demonstrations against racism. Police say they will continue to make targeted arrests as the gathering of protesters is unlawful. Demonstrations have swept the U.S. since the killing of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, by the cops. In particular, Portland has seen more than 3 months of daily demonstrations calling for policing and social justice reforms. In the U.S., Kenosha police shooting victim Jacob Blake has pleaded not guilty to criminal charges filed prior to the shooting on August the 23rd. Blake entered the plea through his lawyer during a live-streamed court hearing, his first public appearance since he was shot by the police. Blake's lawyer, Patrick Cafferty, said his client did not have a prior criminal record and no convictions in any U.S. state. Blake, who is in hospital paralyzed, is accused of criminal trespass, sexual assault and disorderly conduct based on statements by his former girlfriend. The prosecutor, Zachary Weidenfeld, agreed on a conditional bail for Blake, citing his gunshot wounds.
I would ask that the $500 cash that's already been posted on the warrant be applied as a cash condition of the bond. I would ask for additional conditions of no violent contact with the person referenced in the complaint with the initials LNB or her children. Also, no contact with her residence. I would ask for additional conditions that the defendant not possess any weapons and that he not leave the state of Wisconsin for any purpose other than for medical treatment.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the poisoning of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny is a tragic incident, but Washington is yet to see any proof. Trump said the U.S. will soon be receiving some documents over the issue and has to look into the matter very seriously. The president said if Russia is in fact behind the poisoning, the U.S. will strictly respond.
Be very angry if that's the case, and we'll take a look at the numbers and the documents, because we're going to be sent a lot of documents over the next few days.
NATO has urged Russia to cooperate in the international probe into the incident, saying use of chemical weapon shows a total disrespect for human lives. Now moving on, Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez says his country wants to forge a stronger and deeper cooperation with China in the post-pandemic world. He said this during a video address at the China International Trade Fair in Beijing. He acknowledged the world community's shared struggles during the pandemic. The president said state-level cooperation between both the countries will benefit the people and the businesses of both the countries.
Cooperation between China and Argentina not only helps the development of businesses, but also benefits people in both countries. High-tech companies do not come out of thin air, but need promotion and encouragement by the government at the state level.
In Belarus, crackdown on protesters has continued as masked security officials dragged students off the streets in Minsk. Police said up to 30 people were detained for taking part in protests. Draped in red and white opposition flags, students staged protests in several places in the capital. Thousands of women also held a separate march through Minsk in the afternoon. President Alexander Lukashenko has struggled to contain a wave of mass protests since he won a controversial presidential election in August. In Mali, coup leaders have started talks with country's opposition on its promised transition to civilian rule. The talks are being held under junta chief Assimi Goïta in the capital Bamako. On August the 18th, the military took over the government after toppling former President Boubacar Keïta in a coup. They had pledged to step down after an undefined transitional period. Meanwhile, the West African leaders will meet the junta via video conference on Monday to discuss the situation in Mali. In Mali, militants have killed 10 soldiers near the west-central town of Gouaïr at the Mauritania border. The attack was the deadliest against the armed forces since an August 18th military coup in the country. In a statement, the military said reinforcements have been dispatched to the attack site. International powers fear the ousting of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta can further destabilize the West African nation. Sudan's power-sharing government and a major rebel group have agreed to achieve democracy and make the country a secular state. The government agreed the move with the Sudan People's Liberation Movement North by Abdul Aziz Al-Hailo. The group had not joined a deal signed on Monday to end wars stemming from the rule of ousted leader Omar al-Bashir. The group said Sudan is a multiracial and multi-religious society, and the deal affirms a full recognition of these diversities. The declaration said the state shall not establish an official religion and no citizen shall be discriminated on the basis of religion. 3 major groups signed Monday's deal, including factions from Darfur, where more than 300,000 people have been killed since 2003. Sudan has declared a national state of emergency for 3 months because of the floods that have killed nearly 100 people this year. The country's Security and Defense Council has designated Sudan a natural disaster zone. Authorities say the floods inflicted damage on more than 500,000 people and caused the collapse of more than 100,000 homes. Sudan's rainy season begins in June and continues through to October. Now, Colombia's military has taken on a new enemy and is fighting deforestation in the country's national parks. The country's military is one of the most well-trained and well-equipped in Latin America. President Ivan Duque launched Operation Artemisa last year to battle against deforestation in the Amazon. Colombia's Defense Minister Carlos Torrijos said the military has recovered 248 hectares of deforested land in the La Macarena National Natural Park so far. He said the military has also arrested 8 people for invading areas of special ecological importance, damaging natural resources, and trafficking firearms.
This is one of the most important campaigns by public security forces under President Ivan Duque's defense and security policy, who for the first time declared water, biodiversity, and environment as resources of prevailing national interest, recognizing them as national strategic assets.
Despite progress, long distances and lack of transportation infrastructure is making the battle to protect natural resources a tough fight. Now moving on, a zoo in US's Los Angeles City has come up with a cool idea to keep the chimpanzees safe from the scorching Californian heat. More in this report.
Since the early 20th century, temperatures in the U.S. state of California have risen by 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit on average. The resulting parched vegetation has been a major cause of supercharged wildfires in the state and nearby. Amid the rare, dangerous, and possibly fatal heat wave, the Los Angeles Zoo has planned to keep its animals safe from the scorching temperatures. The zoo administration has arranged frozen fruit treats for the chimpanzees from their favorite food.
Chimpanzees are from equatorial Africa, so it's very stable temperatures all year round, fairly humid, not usually over 100, so that'll be a little extreme for them. So we definitely have some fun planned for them. They will have misters and they'll get icy treats that they can cool off with.
With high temperatures forecast across California, Zoo Director Beth Schaffer said it is important to keep animals cool during the heat wave. The zoo also has air-conditioned habitats and separate water streams and pools for different animals.
We do a lot of different things to cool our animals down. They have sometimes access to an indoor temperature-controlled area. Some of them have air conditioning. We sometimes run the hose for them so they can play in the hose. A lot of our animals, as you can see, like our chimpanzees, have their streams and their pools that they can cool off in.
Zoo administration has also advised the public to take care of their pet animals during extreme temperatures.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. The US says its federal debt is projected to exceed the size of its economy in the fiscal year 2021. US's Congressional Budget Office report said the federal budget deficit is projected to hit a record $3.3 trillion. The report shows the Treasury has already spent $2 trillion to prop up the economy amid the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The CBO report projects federal debt held by the public to rise sharply to 98% of GDP in 2020, compared with 79% in 2019. The record $3.3 trillion figure is 3 times more than the shortfall in 2019 and twice the levels reached after the Great Recession of 2008 and 9. The previous peak occurred in 1946 following the large deficits incurred during World War II. In the National Basketball Association, the Houston Rockets beat Los Angeles Lakers by 112 points to 97 in Game 1 of their Western Conference semifinal. Houston's James Harden and Russell Westbrook contributed 60 points in total to clinch a victory in the second round of the playoffs. Lakers power forward Anthony Davis top scored with 25 points and 14 rebounds. Earlier, Miami Heat downed the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks by 115 to 110 points in Game 3 of their Eastern Conference semifinal. Miami's shooting guard Jimmy Butler scored a game-high 30 points to stun the Bucks with a 3-0 lead. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.